Are you eating more protein than you think? You might be. Let me tell you more. Like many of us, we're tracking our calories and our macronutrients, which are our protein, carbohydrates, and fats. And a lot of times we use a food scale. And so we might decide, do we want to weigh things raw, dry weight, or do we want to weigh those after they're cooked and get the cooked weight? And it depends, the things like carbohydrates like rice and pasta, those are going to be dry. Oatmeal, those things we're going to weigh those out when they're dry before we cook them and add water. But meats and proteins and things, you can kind of go either way. You might prefer to weigh those raw before you cook them, and you might actually like to just cook everything in bulk and then weigh out your portions, after you cook it. Either way is fine on proteins. I prefer to cook my proteins and then weigh those out afterwards. But the kicker here about how you could possibly eat more protein than you think is if you buy something that is raw or frozen and you're going off the macronutrients, the protein, carbohydrates, and fats off the label, that is listed for whatever state it's in. So if it's raw, it's the raw numbers. If it's frozen, it's frozen, going off whether it's ounces or grams, for that given serving. And so that's going to change whenever you actually cook that protein source. Typically, if it's something like chicken or beef, steak, pork, that kind of thing, typically that's going to lose about 0.25% or 25% of its weight in moisture loss just by cooking. But you don't lose the protein. You're not going to lose the fats, except some fats you might lose if you're cooking something like ground beef and you're draining the fat afterwards, or if you're cooking on a grill and it's dripping off. But for the most part, all of that is going to be there. However, the net weight of the actual meat itself will be lighter, due to that moisture loss. So, for example, if you buy a 6-ounce sirloin, for example, that raw weight is 6 ounces, and so the protein and fats listed, would be for that raw weight. After you cook that steak to, medium rare, something like that, hopefully you're not cooking it well done. That's another story. But if you're cooking it to medium or medium rare, that net weight of that steak is going to be probably closer to about 4.5 ounces. But again, 4.5 ounces cooked weight. So if you're going off of a raw weight of 6 ounces of steak and you're cooking that to 4.5 ounces, and then maybe you cook 2 steaks, for example, and you weigh out 6 ounces of cooked steak, you're eating about 1.5 ounces more than what you had planned on as far as how much protein and fats that you're getting out of that steak. So that can really add up if you think if you're cooking, your own meals and you're cooking meats for, maybe lunch and dinner, that could be a couple hundred extra calories from protein each day that could add up. And so if you are tracking your calories and tracking your macronutrients, and maybe you're not progressing on the scale like you thought or you think you should, maybe look at how you're tracking your protein and whether you're tracking that raw or cooked. And if you are tracking it cooked or tracking it going off those raw numbers and you're tracking it cooked, then you might need to do a little bit of math to make that easier and make sure you're getting the accurate macronutrients for that amount of protein. So for example, if that 6-ounce steak, if you're going off that's 6 ounces raw and you want 4.5 ounces, that's 0.25 or 25%. So you could take 6 ounces times 0.75, and that would give you 4.5 ounces. And so that's 4.5 ounces of how much you need to eat cooked to get the same amount of protein and fat. So hopefully that helps. If not, if you don't want to do the math, there's other tools out there that have cooked weights kind of estimates. So like calorieking.com is an example. A lot of times you can look up a food by its raw weight, or you can look it up by how it's cooked. So if it's grilled or if it's roasted, that kind of thing. Something that I do for clients as well, that you could do also, if they really just don't want to do the math or worry about that, they just want to go off their labels, the raw weight, but they really want to just, after I cook it, I want to weigh it and I want the same, it's 6 ounces raw, but I'm just going to eat 6 ounces cooked. Sometimes just on paper, I'll just set their protein target a little bit lower. it's just on paper. Doesn't mean you're eating low protein, lower than you need. We know at the end of the day that you're getting, potentially, 40, 50 plus grams extra protein just because you're weighing it after it's been cooked versus raw. So again, hope that helps. If you have any other questions about that, feel free to send them my way. I'm happy to talk about this stuff anytime. So, I appreciate